BeakerBeat.
It's Monday, January 16, 2012. In this week's BeakerBeat, industry heavyweights attend the annual J.P. Morgan Healthcare Conference in San Francisco. We've got the highlights coming up. Plus, was a controversial drug approved by an FDA panel that was stacked in its favor? We've got the details. And quitting smoking is a resolution for many this new year, but do those stop smoking aids help? We have the answer ahead. All that and more in this week's edition of BeakerBeat, brought to you by Life Technologies. To learn more about Life Technologies, visit their company webpage on Beaker.com. Hello everyone, welcome to this week's edition of BeakerBeat. I'm Mike Justice, thanks for tuning in. Well, the Super Bowl's a few weeks away still, but the life sciences industry had their own version of the big game in San Francisco just this past week. It was the 30th annual J.P. Morgan Healthcare Conference.
The name of the game is networking. Businessmen meeting other businessmen for the purpose of meeting again at a later date. Do you understand?
Networking.
Yeah, now, but you gotta be cool. See that guy? He's trying way too hard.
The J.P. Morgan Healthcare Conference is where pharma, biotech, and healthcare CEOs, industry executives, and investors all gather to swap information, handshakes, and pitch their companies. According to sources, there appeared to be much more activity and attendees at this year's biotech showcase than last year, when the general mood was still kind of gloomy from a slowly recovering economy. Big pharma and biotech companies spent the week talking about their plans, meeting with investors, and looking to make deals as well. Meanwhile, venture firms vied for the attention of big drug makers. Not only were they promoting the existing companies in their portfolios, but also hoping to join forces to create new biotech outfits. Now for some details. Pfizer CEO Ian Read revealed the pharma giant's near-term strategy with plans to focus on reasonably priced bolt-on acquisitions and licensing packs. Pfizer will also be pushing 5 key products which have just hit the market or are headed to the FDA. Bristol-Myers Squibb chief Lamberto Andreotti says the company's string of pearls approach is paying off with more on the way. He said his company is sticking to the deal-making model to fuel further growth. Quote, business development remains our top priority, he said. Meanwhile, new drugs like the melanoma drug Yervoy and clot fighter Eliquis, developed with Pfizer, are already boosting sales. Plus $2.5 billion in cost cuts are helping bolster profits. Following in BMS's footsteps, Sanofi CEO Chris Viehbacher told Bloomberg about his plans to string together a series of buyouts this year to the tune of $2.6 billion to boost growth. He's open to looking outside biopharma to areas such as animal health, but is steering clear of Hep C acquisitions like the big one BMS just made. We'll have more on that later in the show. Also from Sanofi, the company invested millions in financing to biotech startup Warp Drive Bio, with an option to buy the company if it hits certain milestones. Watson Pharma CEO Paul Bissaro said he's shopping as well, looking to buy a generic or brand name drug maker. Bissaro said the company wants to expand internationally, and it's looking to build up its branded drug business, which could have a breakout year this year. Hospira CEO Michael Ball had one of the more colorful comments at the conference, saying the company is fighting off the gators that have surfaced as it fixes ongoing manufacturing problems. And here I always thought Washington was filled with snakes and sharks. Anyway, the company has been dealing with regulatory pressures, recalls, and product shortages for months. The company is currently negotiating fixes with the FDA, who are apparently, I think, the gators. So tell us what you think about this story or any story that you see in today's show. It's very simple. Type in your comment below. Send it to me. I promise I'll read and respond to every one of them. And when you're done watching BeakerBeat, check out Beaker's blog and watch interviews with a variety of industry CEOs at the J.P. Morgan Conference. Plus, 3 top dogs in the device industry talk about the looming device excise tax. Hear their thoughts on how it will impact business. Those stories and more on Beaker's blog.
The truth must be told.
When an FDA panel of experts voted 15-11 last month to allow the continued marketing of potentially harmful birth control pills by Bayer, it did not reveal that several members were financially tied to the drug manufacturer. Surprise, surprise. An investigation by the Washington Monthly and the British medical journal BMJ found 4 panelists either had done work for Bayer or a related birth control manufacturer or had received research funding from them. All 4 say they informed the FDA of their connections with Bayer, but no one at the FDA objected. Panel co-chair Julia Johnson conducted 4 clinical trials for Bayer, including one for Bayer subsidiary Berlex on drospirenone, the very drug that the FDA was supposed to be assessing for risk. Thousands of women have sued Bayer, claiming its drugs, Yaz and Yasmin, have caused serious health problems, and they contain that drug. The authors point out that, quote, ironically, while the FDA allowed voting by advisors with business connections to drospirenone, the agency did bar another advisor, Sidney Wolf, the panel's lone consumer advocate, on the grounds that he has an intellectual conflict of interest because he wrote that women should not take Yaz. But apparently, no one at the FDA thought these folks, who were paid by Bayer, were a conflict. Your tax dollars at work. Johnson & Johnson's having a rough start to the new year. Last week we told you about a lawsuit related to their children's OTC medicine blamed in the death of a toddler. Now the FDA alerted J&J it could face penalties, including fines and injunctions, for failing to report incidents in which insulin pumps made by its Animas unit might have caused injury or death. And to top it off, damning evidence in the Texas Risperdal trial where J&J's Janssen unit is accused of defrauding the state by systematically misleading doctors about the antipsychotic drug. After the year they just had, this can't be good. Scandal-plagued Japanese camera and medical equipment maker Olympus is suing 19 current and former executives and board members for roughly $50 million in the wake of an accounting scheme that hid more than $1 billion in losses for years. However, the company is allowing the board members and the president to stay for a while despite the allegations against them. The UK's cost-effectiveness watchdog has nixed Sanofi's prostate cancer treatment Jevtana. The agency won't recommend the drug for use because its benefits don't outweigh the cost or risk of side effects. NICE has been taking a tough stance on expensive drugs, and drug makers who've been approved have been forced to offer discounts and other concessions. Boehringer Ingelheim's blood thinner Pradaxa has been associated with increased risk of heart attack. In a new study, Cleveland Clinic researchers found that Pradaxa increased the risk of acute coronary syndrome and heart attack by about 1/3. This could obviously impact Pradaxa's sales, which could in turn help rivals Eliquis and Xarelto. It may be a new year, but we've heard this story before. Novartis is chopping roughly 2,000 more U.S. jobs, most of them in sales, and in response to Diovan's impending patent expiration. Other job cuts to report. J&J is shedding 120 jobs in Switzerland, and they'll be cutting 126 jobs at an R&D center attached to its plant in Montreal. Meanwhile, Sanofi plans to lay off 100 in Canada, most of those cuts coming at its Montreal operations. Apparently, hepatitis C is the hottest disease in biotech right now. Need proof? Bristol-Myers Squibb spent $2.5 billion to buy Inhibitex, a small developer with a potential blockbuster treatment in mid-stage development. This comes on the heels of Gilead's recent $11 billion purchase of Pharmasset for the same motive, to win the battle for the Hep C market. Analysts are claiming that an all-oral treatment for Hep C can rule a market worth $3 to $5 billion a year. Remediation efforts to correct manufacturing issues at Hospira's Rocky Mount, North Carolina facility and other plants are expected to cost between $300 and $375 million through 2013. However, Hospira's CEO Michael Ball says enough progress has been made at Rocky Mount to presume a return to production within weeks.
This patch steadily releases nicotine into my body, eliminating my need for cigarettes. Roll the cartoon.
Last week we told you about probably the most popular New Year's resolution, to lose weight. And this guy included, not working out so far. Can't quite give up all my beer. Now, the other one is to quit smoking. Now, a lot of folks use the over-the-counter medications, the gums, the patches, that sort of thing, to help them quit. But do those things really work? A new long-term study has found that the nicotine gum and patches that millions of smokers use to help kick their habit, an $800 million market, have no lasting benefit. The study, published in the journal Tobacco Control, included nearly 800 people trying to quit over a period of several years. In previous medical studies, the products proved effective, helping people to quit, at least in the short term. Those earlier findings were the basis for federal guidelines that recommended the products. But in surveys, smokers who have used the OTC products have reported little benefit. The new study followed one group of smokers to see if these products increased their odds of kicking the habit over time, but it did not, even with the aid of counseling. Now, the researchers claim nicotine replacement appears to help people quit at first, but can't prevent a relapse in the long run. Some key factors include motivation, social environment, support from friends and family, and workplace rules of enforcement. Media campaigns, increased tobacco taxes, and tightening of smoking laws have all had an effect as well. So it looks like if you want to quit smoking, you're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way and give it up cold turkey. As for me, I like to keep my tobacco in cigar form, and I refuse to give that up. Personal choice. Well, that's it for this week's edition of BeakerBeat. I'm Mike Justice. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Sit, Beaker. Sit. Good dog. Jeremy, why do they call it cold turkey? Cold turkey's delicious. I don't give that up.